Good evening, everyone. Welcome back then to another LFM stream here for round number 2 of Season 11, where we are at the wonderful, wonderful land of Brands Hatch. Personally, a circuit that I am very, very excited to be seeing on the calendar. A fantastic, authentic British circuit, which is going to be a brilliant test of our drivers in the Pro Series grid tonight. Last week, we were at Imola for the season opener. It was George Boothby in the rather new wealth of McLaren 720S Evos in the field that took the top step of the podium and kicking things off in fine form for the Veloce driver, with Tinko van der Velde and the reigning Pro Series champion Grantis Carreras rounding out the podium. But Brands Hatch, it's a bumpy circuit. It is a circuit where you need high commitment, high confidence in the car. It is fast-paced, and it will have you on the edge of your seat, whether you are a viewer or whether you are the driver behind the wheel. And those McLarens, they are undoubtedly very, very quick, and they've got a lot of downforce bolted on them as well. But when it comes to dealing with the bumpy nature of this circuit, will that be something that starts to upset the McLarens and maybe gives opportunities for other cars in the field? We'll have to wait and see. But speaking of this wonderful circuit, let's have a little bit of a look at this wonderful, wonderful place. 9 turns of glorious motorsports action. And it is a very, very, very fast circuit through Paddock Hill Bend, down in towards Drury's, then flying in towards Graham Hill, and then start to climb your way up the Cooper Straight before going towards Surtees Corner. You have to be patient with this one. It's longer than you think. Get on the power and carry all of that momentum up through the hill. You go under the bridge, down into Pilgrim's Drop, and then into a very high-speed commitment corner of Hawthorns. You have to have a lot of downforce on board the car through this section because it comes at you thick and fast, through in towards Westfield, then into Dingledell and through into Sheen Curve before entering Stirling's, making use of the camber on the inside, and then the final run towards Clearways, very long corner to put you onto the not quite start-finish straight, but it's straight enough in the grand scheme of things for this wonderful circuit. So just 9 corners, but I tell you what, they are some of the best combination 9 corners that you can have in GT racing, although I'm sure that there'll be many an opinion chucked around, and possibly even depending on what car you are in for this evening, it's certainly going to be making a difference over what you feel about this wonderful circuit. So we should be able to make our way into the server now, and with a slightly more observation skills, also hopefully making our way into the correct server this time around, but we won't talk too much more about that one. And also, fingers crossed, we'll wait and see, but hopefully all things will be working from an overlay perspective for this evening. So we'll see how that ends up playing out, and I shall get these bits and pieces in place. And I don't want to get too optimistic too quickly, but I think we might actually be in with a little bit of luck for tonight's race. On that front, drivers just getting their last bits of practice sorted, and again, we talk so often about it, about, do you try to get those final few tenths of a second per lap, thinking about the race distance, or do you really try to optimize track position and get that as your final little bits and pieces of practice? You can play it very, very differently, and each of which have their advantages and disadvantages, because if you're good in the race, of course, you are fundamentally in a position to be making up places. However, if you don't qualify well, you might be starting a tricky position. Very, very densely packed grid full of talents makes it sometimes quite tricky to get the overtakes in as well. So can certainly have a lot of effect on your race if you don't quite get yourself into where you want to be. But there we go, we have overlays up and running. Wonderful stuff, as we are looking at the 2-time Pro Series champion Marco Bischoff, who's taken a little bit of a detour away from the norm of what we've seen. The K-Chroma Racing esports driver appearing in slightly unfamiliar colours, but also unfamiliar manufacturer as well. So he's in the Lamborghini Evo edition. Of course, has been driving the Porsche for a very long time, and his teammate Noah Reeder, who has usually joined him, is also making a bit of a change in this number 15 Mercedes. So definitely an array of choices there, but it's so good to see where we've got the likes of those cars. We've got this new McLaren. We've also got that Unicorns of Love Mercedes going on by. I believe that is Florian Duakop in the server, if I'm not mistaken. In actual fact, no, excuse me, it's the man that finished runner-up in the championship last season. That is Nicholas Huben, who had a very good championship, still not a race winner. A little bit of a theme, actually, last season, where Grantas Carrecas, who previously has shown such good promise. Season to season, he's constantly been in the championship fight. He's been very consistent. But up until last season, he had not taken a race victory. By the time he finished Season 10, he ended up having a win rate that was about 50%, which was just an astonishing tally and such a fantastic change of form from him. And this man ended up putting him under pressure all the way up until the final round, but had it slip away just unfortunately for him in the closing stages at Monza. Didn't quite have enough. It was a team effort on both parts from Veloce and the Unicorns of Love team, but in the end, the pink and black outfit didn't quite come out on top on that occasion. It did end up going the way of the Lithuanian driver, who in this session currently sits in P4 and is also a driver that has taken a little bit of a new liking to this McLaren. A very, very fast car, already proven so by his teammate George Boothby last week. So I have to see how that gets on for this evening. And yes, absolutely, track position is incredibly important. Very difficult to overtake at this circuit, and I've seen in the past the likes of George Boothby actually go for very, very harsh undercut strategies, sacrificing everything when it comes to race pace just so that he can get track position and try to put himself in a good spot for later on in the race and try to keep those cars behind. And I'll tell you what, it's a powerful undercut of that as well, because these tyres, they take a battering. You've got fast corner after fast corner. They are just desperate for a sigh of relief, really. So you get a fresh set of boots on the car and you are absolutely flying. So undercut, very powerful, and track position incredibly crucial around here as well, without a shadow of a doubt. So we shall get things ready and set up for the session ahead. So just about 60 seconds left to go, and a familiar face in the McLaren. Someone will be very happy for this car. Robin Schwanker in the Team 1 FF number 6 car. A man that's been competitive in this car in the past. He hasn't shown up in too many races in the Pro Series. Maybe that'll change for this season, because he has been a fan of his car, and quite clearly it's a pretty good one to be in, so I have to see how he gets on. And right now, he sits 200ths of a second faster than anyone else in the practice session. Maybe about to be undone, though, by the Frenchman number 13 of Valentin Barrett for Yas ET Sports, who crosses line and almost breaks into the 21s. But he does a 22 points, I say only. These guys are absolute weapons behind the wheels of these cars and are far, far quicker than certainly I will ever be. Yeah, really are a fantastic benchmark and showcase. They don't speak too soon. It's okay, it's practice. As Mabel Fuchs goes exploring track limits wise, puts a wheel out on the grass. Won't want to be doing that all too often in the race or qualifying. And also you have to be careful about track limits around. And you see, through Paddock Hill Bend, also Graham Hill is another one where it's very easy to extend just a bit. Also on the exit of Sheen Curve as well. You can get away with using a bit of the grass there, not too much, whereas it gets very bumpy and you're in for a very interesting ride on the way towards the next left-hander. But it is certainly a track that, because of the speed you're carrying, because of the openness, the flow of this circuit, it's what these drivers love, the flow of this circuit, where it just feels natural. Each corner just feels properly connected to the next. That encourages you to go exploring that a bit further than you might otherwise do. And whilst that's all good, track limits, like I say, you have to be wary of them, otherwise you will look to get a drive-through penalty. And George Boothby just not quite showing his hand just yet. He was on an improvement on that lap, however, deciding not to complete it in the end. So it'd be interesting to see what the winner from round 1 has to offer in qualifying. We know that George Boothby is exceptional both in qualifying trim and also the race, and he certainly showed that to the masses last time out. Tans versus Hacker in the number 25 Audi, just crossing the line, and we make our way over to qualifying now. So, as I just flick back over, usually I have to tap back into the session, but ACC very kindly actually kept me completely involved in the quality setup. So we shall just continue on from there. So the leaderboard over on your left, we do have this week, will clear up in a moment once drivers start to set their first lap times. And the first of the drivers that are out on the circuit, the number 29 of Igor Simonov in the Motor Shark Esports car. I do believe Simonov was with us last week at Imola, if I recall correctly, and he finished in 22nd for the first race. He'll be hoping to go perhaps a little bit better, maybe break into the top 20. No, this pack of cars, this grid that we have in the top split of the Pro Series is so densely packed with talent. It is very, very scary. I mean, you know, the ELO of the licenses that we are talking about here are, you know, in the case of the likes of Grantis Korekas and Marco Bischoff, 7,000 plus. And we have got big names here: George Boothby, Tinko van der Velde, Grantis Korekas, Niels Nyox, Marco Bischoff, Carpenter, Whitehead, Wenham, Valentin Barrier, Walsingham, all of these drivers that you see at the very tippy top of ACC, wherever they go, all very much here and here to have a wonderful fight. But we'll go on board with Simonov to show us around for a first lap of this fantastic circuit. Just 9 corners, but they are wonderful ones through Paddock Hill Bend for the first time. Dipping a wheel in the gravel, got to be careful not to lose too much momentum as a result of that. Down in towards the next turn of Drury's. Got to be careful on the gears. You see a little bit squirrely on the exit in first gear. McLaren has been known, this car, to be a little bit loose on traction in slow speed corners. Going up through the gears now, down in towards second, trying to use the engine braking to rotate the car through. Left-hander of Surtees on the power, careful on that curb, it's bumpy on the exit, and right now it's the Audi actually of Felix Tanzvenza Hacker further down the order that is setting the pace in the opening sector. Audi maybe looking very good here through this fast right-hander of Hawthorne's. Careful on the exit again, you can get away with a little bit of grass but not too much, and then this absolute flurry of right-handers, maybe going exploring a bit further than the number 29 car would have liked there, and that has resulted in invalidation. We will stick with him though, and that's the scary corner through their off-sheen curve, blind over the crest, and then whipping it back over to right hand side for Sterling's, using up all the curve on the exit under the bridge before heading in towards clearways. And then keeping the nose of the car tucked in there on the power as early as you can. Use the whole width of the track. Carry the momentum down towards the start-finish line. And there's an opening bid to 23.1, but it's not a valid lap time, so it will be Oscar Tringali in number 23 Italian. Set the initial pace before Niels Narks for BS Plus competition. Immediately gets displaced by 2 McLarens, the leading of the bunch, Trevor Wenham, who rejoined us after a little bit of a hiatus away from the Pro Series and LFM. And last season immediately showed that he was on the pace and continuing to do exactly that. Let's see if we can catch up with Tanzvenza Hacker. Whereabouts is he on his lap? Just try to see. That's... Oh, he's shuffled around the order, so I couldn't quite click on him. Disappointing. Meanwhile, Grantis Korekas makes it a Veloce 1-2 with his teammate George Boothby, last week's race winner, to go to the top of the time machines with Marco Bischoff in the Lamborghini, slotting into P3. And then we have the likes of Nicholas Huben in P8, Philip Engman P9, and the Ferrari Tringali staying in P10. Good effort there from the Italian driver, as is a wealth of very fast cars behind him. In the end, so I think Tanzvenza Hacker invalidated his lap and then backed off, and unfortunately he's invalidated this one as well. But I can tell you, in terms of the delta, that if he was to complete the lap, he's now backed off to allow one of the McLarens through. But if he had completed that, that was looking to be around top 5 pace. It's the Frenchman of Valentin Barry, who was already looking very quick in practice. he decides to pop in a time almost into the 21s again. But I'll tell you what, George Boothby, last week's winner, he's feeling dialed in with this car. He's going very quick. So is Marco Bischoff in the Lamborghini, though. That would be a bit of a shock pole position if that came through for the Veloce driver. It's good enough to go to the top of the timing sheets for time being. But what can this man do? The number 2 car, the number 2 man on the LFM platform overall. Karekas improves as well. Not quite good enough to displace his teammate. What about Marco Bischoff trying to go to the top of the timing sheets? Oh, and it's only good enough for P4 in the end. Maybe a little bit of a tardy sector at the end of the lap, but certainly showed good pace at the beginning, and it's Veloce, Veloce slash Yassit for 1, 2, 3, and 4 right now, and it is all McLarens throughout those positions. Jadier doing the fastest middle sector of the bunch. Ivax in the open and out, but in the background, but regardless, we'll carry on and see how these guys continue to get on. Looking at Tringali, continuing to show good pace in this number 23 car. He is not done. He's found 0.3 of a second on this lap. That is certainly going to shoot him up in towards the top 10 by the time he rounds out the lap. And for the Italian, it is good enough for P8 for the number 23 car. Good stuff there from him. This Ferrari came into ACC fundamentally looking like the firm favourite as the car to beat. Has lost a little bit of pace overall since then, kind of in a bit of a grand reshuffle and things, but still definitely very much has a opportunity from time to time to get a good result, and is the Audi of Tinko van der Velde, who went purple on Sector 1 on his last lap. It wasn't a purple this time, but good enough to get himself into the top 3, and I tell you what, he was absolutely throwing that car around on the exit of the final corner there, so he splits up that pack of McLarens up at the front there. The Williams Esports driver representing Jaimo there in that very distinctive livery. 8.5 minutes of qualifying left to go. George Boothby finding a 1/10 of a second on his lap, just a little bit further ahead up the road of Van der Velde. He has lost a bit of momentum though on the exit. It's dropped down, but meanwhile it is this man, the number 14 car, that's continuing to find pace. He went up into P2 last race. Can he go one better? Let's go on ball with him here in the Audi. That V10 screaming in the background, and also Tinko probably screaming on for dear life every time he ends up going over some of these curves, because this is quite a leery car to gather up. See the commitment through here. You have to just turn in. Oh dear, that's Boothby up ahead. That's going to be awkward for Tinko, and that's completely compromised his lap. I say, was that George Boothby, or was that correct? Because I'm not entirely sure. We'll see if we can gather a replay of that one, but that was exactly when one from another. Anyway, a very firm demonstration of exactly how deadly this Brands Hatch race circuit can be, and I think it was for George Boothby there. And what on earth was happening between all that? My goodness, both of Veloce McLarens. Well, Tinko van der Velde, I don't think really stood much of a chance there. He had one Veloce McLaren that was in the barrier entirely. That was Karekas who immediately went to the pits. And then George Boothby found himself flying into the wall, Beybladed across the circuit. Tinko did round out the lap, but unsurprisingly, wasn't quite the lap I think he was going for. But I'll tell you what, one person's going to be a happy man on that last batch of laps is Marco Bischoff, because he did find pace in the Lamborghini and has put himself up in towards provisional pole position by 0.07 of a second. Nothing to choose. Look at the deltas inside the top 5. Less than half a 1/10 separating 5 cars. And Marco Bischoff, the man that's gone to the top of those time sheets, didn't go purple in a single sector, but he absolutely constructed good sectors piece to piece, and he's ended up going fastest overall. But I tell you what, whilst Boothby and Karekas may have slightly fired themselves off into the wall, they undoubtedly will be pushing on again in just a moment, as will Tinko van der Velde, who was a 1/10 of a second up, and that would have allowed him to maybe even break into the 21s if he had rounded out the lap. So we'll have to see how he gets on. Jadier briefly going purple in the opening part of a lap. He is finding pace. The number 3 car has been without victory in this championship for a few races now, making a switch over to this McLaren. I think he's been enjoying this car. It's been, I know he had some mixed feelings about it initially when it came out. The slow speed oversteer was a little bit difficult and tricky to deal with, but naturally, as you learn a car more, you understand how to set up the car more, you can dial some of those aspects out and be a bit more anticipating in towards how each of these cars behave. That's what the wonderful thing about GT racing is. Each car has its own characteristics, its own quirks that make it quick, and you never quite know from track to track. Whilst we do have BOP in place to try to even out the playing field, it's always natural there's going to be a certain car that'll be quicker than another one. It's just, you know, you can only do so much against the world of physics, and Jardier right now is absolutely marginal with his delta, trying to see if he can improve. Might be a tiny improvement. It's all it needs to be. He gets himself up in towards P3. He does a 0.0 for the first time in this session, 5 thousandths quicker than Karekas, 100 slower than Boothby, and only 17 thousandths away from your current pole sitter. And he's already looking to improve on purple in that middle sector, and he's already carrying good pace on this next lap, so we'll have to see how he gets on. Timo Carpenter a bit further down the order as he slightly bumped in and out of the World Surface. Grip Hack's engineering car taking some level of liberty with the track limits. You can be pretty aggressive on the cuts, but that, well, a little bit of karma there perhaps for number 8 car. You can only use up so much of the grass, but you put it on the outside of the car and you're not in for a fun time. And Timo finding that out very, very heavily there on the entry in towards Sheen curve, but he will get going for another lap. Meanwhile, George Boothby finding a whole host of time in the opening sector, 0.2 of a second. Jardier has backed out of his lap, so he's going to go back to the pits and put on a fresh set of tyres. Meanwhile, George Boothby trying to see if he can get himself back up to pole position. Marco Bischoff on a small improvement as well. Karekas currently not finding time, but is absolutely by the smallest of margins. Omashima puts the Ferrari up, the McLaren up into towards P5, so good improvement there from him. Tinko currently on a lap, everybody going green inside the top 10 more or less. And you really need to be finding time in these crucial moments. And George Boothby may have just been the lap that he was going to have to take pole position, because that cost him dearly, a vital 10th off his time. And meanwhile, Marco Bischoff flying through Sheen curve and flying too much, and he's put it into the grass as well. This is what I mean about this circuit. It is absolutely the finest of margins, and you have to be so committed. Nicholas Huben firing himself off into the wall at turn 1, currently sits in P9. And meanwhile, we have Robin Schwanker still sitting inside the top 10, trying to move his way up. Finding a 10th at the moment. Valentin Barrier was on a good lap as well. He's backed out. And these drivers, they're running out of time to get another lap on the board. There's not a lot to play with. Robin Schwanker, the German driver, coming towards the line now. It's going to be good enough around the top 10 still. It's a good improvement, but even though it may be small margins at the top, as Tinko rounds out his lap, and he's 5 thousandths away from Marco Bischoff. Have you ever seen a qualifying session this close? A 10th separates the top 8 in this field. It's 5 thousandths, 7 thousandths, 17 between the top 4, and it is nail-biting stuff going down to the wire in this final session, final execution of laps in this qualifying session. Marco Bischoff looks like he's on one already, so he should get one more after he crosses a line. But that's another one. I need to stop pointing the cameras at these people. As soon as I do, they fire themselves off. But Dingo van der Velde currently going purple towards up into Hawthorns now. Big commitment. We get a faithful of Bridge, and that's a lot of traffic up ahead. You've got the likes of Huber, there's McLaren up there. I think that's Valentin Barrier. Tinko's already had to abort a lap for the Veloce McLaren's having a bit of an issue right up to this portion of the circuit, but he's maintaining the advantage for now. Any yellow flags in front of him? It doesn't look like it. So see if he can carry this one to the line. Can he be the first man to make it into the 21s? George Boothby pushing pushing behind him as well, and is going faster as of right now. It might be good enough for provisional pole for the Dutch driver, but George Boothby trying to see if he can make it a Brit on pole at his home circuit, and it is a 21 for Tinko van der Velde. But let's see, what about the McLaren driver? He had issues here not too long ago. Up in towards Sheen Curve. Oh, that's a spin! Could that compromise George Boothby? He's kept it absolutely pinned to the floor, and he's still up on his previous time. It is absolutely marginal, and he's lost a little bit on the exit there. I think he may have had to back off slightly, and he's lost that very crucial improvement. Did the mistake on the previous lap cost him a chance at pole position? Nothing further from Marco or Tinko. George Boothby going for glory, but I don't think he's going to get it, and he is going to start no higher than a P3. What about Jardier? Excuse me, George Boothby could actually still put in one more lap. So whilst Tinko and Marco Bischoff have gone to the pits, these other McLarens, they're not done just yet. Onmashima, it has retired from the session, though. So has Grantis Correca. So it's only the likes of Jardier, George Boothby, Trevor Wenham that may be able to challenge for pole position. Valentine has also gone to the pits as well. More and more drivers running out of opportunities to find lap time in this session. Simonov is up by a couple of tenths. He's really the only one that's on a significant improvement at the moment. So's Noah Reeder in the Mercedes. Got quite a chunk of this lap to go. As Trevor Wenham, he hasn't been able to improve on his lap. Whereabouts is Jardier? Oh my goodness! He's gone skateboarding on the exit of that turn. I don't think it's going to be an improvement for him. George Boothby has gone to the pits. Jardier is going to finish the lap. He's practicing the pit entry for this one as well. And I think that's a sign Oscar Tringali is entering the pits, and it doesn't look like, unless Narita, nope, he's gone off into the grass as well. My goodness, these drivers absolutely doing wonders for the local gardeners of the Brands Hatch circuit as they unleash all of these GT cars over the greenery. But I don't think the number 15 car, he's lost momentum on the exit of the final corner and is not going to improve any further. What about the likes of Kevin Schwartz in the number 11? He will start in a 20th place. Has to take a little bit of evasive action at the end there. But my goodness, what a brilliant qualifying session that was from our drivers. And that is exactly what I was hoping and expecting Brands Hatch to deliver. We haven't even got into the race yet. What about that for a qualifying? Absolutely separated by the smallest of margins that you could possibly imagine. And it just goes to show not just what this circuit can do, but the level of talent in this grid that you have to extract everything that you possibly can in order to put it on pole. And in the end, Tinko van der Velde in that number 14 Audi got a little bit unlucky on his penultimate run, but he did manage to put it all together when it counted. And excellent stuff from the Dutch driver. We'll have a look through the official order in just a moment and see exactly how we are going to be lining up for 60 minutes of racing for this evening. And wonderful stuff. The overlays have indeed loaded in, so we shall make our way over to that in just a second. And there we go. So your pole sitter, Tinko van der Velde, and possibly also his first pole position here in the Pro Series. Great stuff from the number 14 car. George Boothby, last week's race winner, will start on the front row. Still plenty of opportunities there for the British driver to get a victory at his home circuit. Marco Bischoff, impressive from the two-time Pro Series champion. Starts in P3 ahead of the number 3 car of Jardier in P4 then. Grantis Correca, the next of the Veloce McLarens, starts in P5, the reigning Pro Series champion. Maybe would have wanted a little bit more than that. The Japanese driver of Onmashima starts in P6 with Trevor Wenham starting in P7. Good performance once again from the man that was a long time at the top of the ELO rankings here at LFM. Valentine Barrier for Yassi starts in P8, with Robin Schwanker returning to a new and improved McLaren and starts inside the top 10 in P9, with Nicholas Huben last season's runner-up in that number 4 Unicorns of Love Mercedes, starting in P10. Oscar Tringali, the next of the bunch in this number 23 Ferrari. Good effort there from the Italian driver to extract the pace out of that car. Timo Karpanu, who had a little bit of a tricky qualifying at times, starts in P12 with Matteo Noldi for BF Racing in the P13 spot. Lois Rainier, the Frenchman, starts in P14 for SDL Esports, and then the next of those very identifiable pink Audis for Team Hymo starts in P15 for Felix Tanzvinza Hacker. Sasha Vassner starts in P16 for that lovely-looking LFM Mercedes, maybe slightly biased, of course. Alvin Manson in the number 19 car starts in P17. Noah Reeder in his new Mercedes, as he continues to learn that car and get to grips with the German outfit, starts in P18 with Niels Narax, who briefly went to the pointy end of the grid in qualifying, struggling to extract pace in that BMW. A car that used to be so formidable, now a little bit difficult to get pace from at times. Kevin Schwartz rounds out the top 20 in that Yeezy Sports Lamborghini, a car that we've so often seen, or the team, sorry, that we've so often seen in the BMW. So good to see them trying out the mid-engined cars of the bunch as well. Philip Engman starts in 21st place with Simonov and Goppelt rounding out the next couple of spots in their respective McLarens. Next of the Audis of the grid, with Luca Wieninger in the number 31 car, starts in 24th place. Wout Neuwirth in his beloved Aston Martin that he has used, I think, in every single LFM race that we have seen him in, starts in 25th place. Toby Lang, the German, starts in 26th, with Lucas Bergol next of those Ferrari 296s in 27th place, ahead of the 22 car. Samir Focco, I believe we're seeing for the first time, driving for Yassit, of course, but now in the Lamborghini, of course, has driven the Ferrari for a very, very long time, both across the 488 and also into this new 296. So interesting to see that he has stayed within the country as such for cars, but has decided to make his way over to the Lamborghini. Manuel Fuchs in 29th, followed by Jimmy Holm rounding out the top 30, with Dominic Bush 31st, Dom Healy for Wild Things Racing in 32nd, and the last car on the grid of Leonardo Pagano rounding out this fantastic looking order, and we shall see exactly how our drivers are going to be getting on for tonight. They have 60 minutes of action around this circuit. Right now, looking like it is going to be sunny skies. We know the British weather can be a little bit eventful at times, so I would imagine that for some there'll be some sighs of relief. Others, they would have been hoping maybe for things to chop and change just a little bit on that front, as quite often having the rain can mix up the order a little bit. Maybe if you're struggling for pace but have a car that you feel confident driving, where weather can allow you to really progress up nicely through the field. We have got the number 2 car. That, I think, is Marco Bischoff, who's still in the pit lane. So the 2-time Pro Series champion and was due to start 3rd place in this race has, for some reason, it looks like he's going to be starting from the pit lane. That could either be some sort of technical issue or maybe he could have also missed the start. Of course, he's a very experienced driver, so I hesitate to suggest he may have made a simple mistake like that, but it can happen to the very best. So if you do make that mistake, just like I can't put my words together, do not feel bad, because even sometimes the very best on these fantastic sims can make those errors as well. I know I've certainly done some peculiar things in my sim racing past. Dry tyres in full out-and-out wet weather, wet tyres in full out-and-out dry weather. I've done the lot, but I'll tell you what is going to be a fantastic hour of racing. So buckle in, everybody. Warm welcome to you all in the chat if you are joining us for the first time for round 2 of the Pro Series here in Season 11. Dingo Van der Velde is going to lead them away towards Paddock Hill Bend. Can he make it? the first Audi victory that we've seen in a while here in the Case King Pro Series. We'll have to wait and see. Will George Boothby make it 2 for 2? It's a good start for Tinko off the launch. Fantastic start, in fact, as George Boothby tries to side run up the inside, but he can't make a move. A little bit wide on the exit there. Pole sent absolutely into the Shadow Realm on the exit of turn 1 there as we go into a helicam, trying to see all the action taking place. Grant Karekas being put immediately under pressure from Kazuki on machine with the Japanese driver, trying to see if he can make his way up into P4. Looking at the inside, Graham Hill's bend, but he can't do it. Vanzine Barry having to defend from Nicholas Huben as well. It's also very busy further down the order, side by side, two abreast. Absolutely, Oscar Tringali trying to send one up the inside into the left hand. The yellow flag for Samir Fogg in the Lamborghini. Timu Karpinen wide on the exit there. So was Noah Reid. That's going to leave him vulnerable to the McLaren of Lois Rainey, the Frenchman in the slipstream of the Mercedes up ahead, trying to go around the outside of Hawthorne. That's going to be brave. Timu holding that inside line, takes a little bit too much. Come on the entry, defensive line, late move towards that inside line. Sasha Vassner trying to see if he can find a way through in all of this, but the Grip Hanks engineering car does hold on for the time being. Has to go middle of the road though towards Shinko, but surely an opportunity for a move there, especially on the opening lap as they go single file through this sector and round out the lap at the front. Though it is Tinko breaking away just a little bit with George Boothby, who's immediately in hot pursuit in that Veloce McLaren. You can see absolutely applying the pressure already to the bright pink Audi that leads the way as they round out the first lap. Down in towards Paddock Hill Bend, you can see these cars squirming under brakes. It's a tricky one to get right as we look further down the order. Support in the chat for this man as well. Matteo Naldi down in P16. He has lost a few positions off the start, looking trying to see if he can regain some. Almost 3 wide between these drivers. That's Lucas Bergel trying to go around the outside of the Mercedes Manuel Fuchs, but as a result, he's now got Dominic Bush trying to go around the outside of him at Graham Hill Bend in the Porsche. That'll be a fabulous move if he can make it stick. I don't think he's going to quite have the room to do that. He's got to be careful of Jimmy Holm in that bright green Ferrari, trying to show his nose. He's doing more than that. He's sent out the inside. Fine margins between these drivers, even at the tail end of the field. Up at the front, though, it is still Van Velde going wide on the exit of Hawthorne's ahead of George Boothby, Jardier, Grant Karekas, Onmashima, Wenham, Schwanker, Barrier, Huben and Karpinen making up your top 10 in this race. Marco Bischoff has got underway and has rejoined, already making up position over Samir Fogg in the fellow Lamborghini. And as he will try to see if he can do something special, put on a champion's drive and get into the point. Someone, though, that is not hanging about. Niels Nyrox making a move, and now it's Albin Manson coming under pressure from the Lamborghini of Kevin Schwartz, trying to go around the outside of the final turn. That is an absolutely incredible move from the Lamborghini driver. Take a bow, and poor Manson's day is not getting any better. That's not the view I wanted. There we go. On board the rear wing is now the Audi of Wieninger, trying to go around the outside of Paddock Hill Bend, almost into the rear diffuse. And you can see anytime that you try to make a move in this series, you've got to be so aware of who you're fighting around, because it can go wrong very quickly. You can see yourself being shuffled down the order. That almost happened to Philip Engman not too long ago. Could even happen to Toby Lang on the run in towards Graham Hill's Bend, but he looks like he should have the position just about covered. Looking back up towards the front of the grid, last lap fastest was Grant Karekas on 22.8, the only man in the whole field in the 22, so maybe not his best qualifying, but certainly looks to be in this tussle at the front. See a little bit of a break in the train after Karekas and also after Onmashima, who's still staying well within touching distance of this lead group. But with that track position, Van der Velde currently keeping this absolute flurry of McLarens at bay. I think this will certainly put into perspective for Tinko. Look at all those McLarens snaking around behind him, trying to find an opportunity. The V10 roaring delightfully in the back of his car. Of course, Heimo plastered across that rear wing as we head towards turn 1 once more. None of these drivers quite able to make up a move just yet, but as soon as anyone senses an opportunity, you can guarantee they'll be sending up the inside and seeing what they can do, and those will be behind them will be surely to pounce immediately, as swapping of positions were Neuwirth off and Fuchs, who's trying to cut back down the inside. Smallest of margins towards Paddock Hill Bend, couldn't quite get it done. Meanwhile, big battle going on here between Bergel, Drexler, Dom Healy, all for inside the top 30 there. And it is Bergel that has stayed ahead of this little trio of cars. We'll have to keep an eye on this man further down the order, Marco Bischoff. That looked like a little bit of networks-related stuff, so maybe that was an issue for the number 2 car. Potentially, not sure, but hopefully Marco can use all of his pace, do exactly what he does best, and get himself back up towards the other pack of cars. George Boothby still applying the pressure. Let's go on board the front splitter of this McLaren as he hunts down Tinko in the Audi just in front of him, trying to see can he make it back-to-back victories. It's one thing to get a victory in the Pro Series, it's another when you do it back-to-back, and that's something his teammate was so good at last season. But maybe, does George Boothby think this is finally his season? He's been one of the winningest drivers in the Pro Series, and this man here absolutely dominated in Season 10, trying to go around the outside of Jardier towards Turn 1. He can't get it done there. Looking to see if he can cut back as they head towards Drury's now. Maybe move up the inside, not quite. Is going to be a little bit kinder to his teammates than dive bombing after just the first couple of laps. But you see the margins between these drivers, there's nothing to choose between them, and that's what we'd expect. Qualifying was very, very tight between them all as well. We're already 6 minutes into this race, and I can guarantee you, everybody, that this is going to be exactly what we're treated to all the way to the end. But a little bit of squirrely moments for Jardier on the exit of the left-hander there. I told you it was bumpy. I told you it can upset the car, and this McLaren isn't the happiest over those bumps, but it looks like he's got good enough top speed to keep his sister teammates at bay. And Korekas, he'll be looking at the fact that that gap between Jardier and George Boothby and your leader is just opening up a little bit. It may only be 0.6 of a second, but when the margins are so tight, it absolutely comes down to the wire. And Tinko van der Velde may have just put himself under pressure from George Boothby. Chunk of momentum lost on the exit there, but somehow he still has enough to work with to keep it all together, and need to hook the car into that camber of Sterling's, otherwise you will get spit out immediately. And George Boothby doesn't quite look like he's got the grunt in the McLaren. It's a pretty fast car in the straights, but this Audi is very quick. I'll tell you what, fastest lap last time around, 22.537 for Valentin Barrier. Of course, maybe a little bit more open gaps in the tail end of the top 10. But still excellent pace from the Frenchman, and everybody all the way up until round... I mean, we've still got drivers lapping in the 22.8s as far as P17 for Niels Nark, so everybody is absolutely on the pace right now, and that's your track map right now is absolutely clustered with these cars, and that guarantees us fantastic action all the way. And I think it could be Robin Schranker to give us our next piece, trying to see if we can go around the outside of Trevor Wenham, who goes a little bit over the curb there. Yellow flag further down the order. That's the number 28 car, Manuel Fuchs, and Trevor Wenham in the grass again. He should have just about enough of a margin by the looks of it to hold on to the position for now. Let's see, can we catch what happens to the German driver further down the order? See, there's battles ablaze absolutely everywhere. Speaking of love of the Porsche, that is Dominic Busch sending one up the inside of the left hand, and gets it all wrong. And that is Jimmy Holm that takes 2 for the price of 1. Says thank you, everybody. Goes up the back straight in a newfound position. I did see some support for this man in the chat as well, so a nice little double overtake for the number 34 car as these drivers continue to push on. But unfortunate stuff, and I'm sure the stewards will have plenty to be looking at. We will try to have a look at the stewards' inquiries at some point. It tends to rely on these drivers giving me a moment to breathe and to think, but at the same time, I wouldn't have it any other way, because this is what we love about this championship. Yellow flag for Manuel Fuchs. I do believe that is going to be a retirement for the German drivers. So obviously after that instance, down towards the left-hander, has decided to park it there. Leaderboard will sort itself out in just a moment. But unfortunate stuff there for the Mercedes driver. Meanwhile, Tinko van der Velde still leads away in this Hymo Audi, the number 14 car, with George Boothby applying the pressure, as is Grantis Korekas to Jardier in P3. You can see more confidence there for most of the McLarens. Jardier was a little bit wary of the inside curb at Sheen there, and Tinko absolutely pushing to the limit. George Boothby trying to find any opportunity, but these two absolutely glued together on pace. Grantus looking up the inside for a brief moment there onto Jardier, but couldn't get anything done at this point in time. Someone that can, as that looks like that was Dom Healy having a bit of a moment on the exit as they climb up towards the final turn, trying to go for the cutback. That'd be a beautiful move. He can make it stick. Hasn't quite got the momentum, but here comes Marco Bischoff trying to go around the outside of the pair of them. The German that started from the pit lane, trying to see if he can make it double move into towards turn one. It may not be a double, but it's some mighty fine attempt. He gets past Dom Healy. He is going to get to the inside, is he? And he does. And now looks to try to pounce onto Ferrari. Dominic Bush recovering after his incidents with the Mercedes, trying to see if he can get past the Aston Martin, but he can't quite. But number 2 car, it may only be P29, but 10 minutes in, he is already closing up to some of these trailing cars, and you can guarantee if he goes for a big undercut here, he can very much find himself in a position to try to make his way up the order. But a big fault move there from the 2-time champion of this series. Meanwhile, Kareka's still trying to apply the pressure onto Jardier, who has been dropping pace over the last few laps. It may only be 0.4 of a second, but there is absolutely nothing to... I haven't even got a delta margin between these two at the front. There is that little to choose between them, as again we go on board with George Boothby, who just can't close the gap down the start-finish straight. That Audi has something special in the rear of that car, and it is allowing Tinko van der Velde to hold on to this race lead, and George Boothby just having to try to be calculating. Omashima has taken fastest lap of the race at this point in time, 22.4 for the Japanese driver, and he is very much included in this fight for the podium positions. And you see these margins actually starting to close out once more. So that lead group now almost starting to become a scrap of 5 cars in the lead train. There's a little bit of a break down to Trevor Wenham, where there is the next batch of McLarens, and then the Lamborghinis and Mercedes of Karppinen and Huben respectively. A bit further down the order, but nothing to choose between your front runners. And yeah, not so much love for the Porsche nowadays. It's did used to be a very popular car, as Kevin Schwartz under pressure from Manson at the top of the hill as they head through in towards Westfield. Manson, that's a brave move in towards the inside of the Sheen curve. He's got it done. Fantastic stuff. Kevin Schwartz has to be careful not to go on the grass on the exit, but brave maneuver from the number 19 car, and it may be team nearly on pace, but I tell you what, that was a fantastically executed move, and puts himself up into P18. So great stuff from the Swedish driver. As meanwhile, Tanzvin's the hacker and Matteo Nordi swapping positions potentially as they cross start finish line. Either that or they were very, very close to one another. Someone that is making a move. Oh my goodness, what on earth is happening here? Marco Bischoff has made a move up over Jan Drexler. We almost have 3 wide towards turn 1. The BMW is staying in front for the time being. Lucas Bergold has the Aston Martin. Dom Healy again with the Porsche of Dominic Bush, the sole Porsche in this server, I do believe, trying to go all the way around the outside, but he's going to be muscled out on the exit, and in the end will have to stay in 31st position. There was also scraps going on inside or the tail end of the top 20 that I saw kicking off there, but I didn't quite catch who that's involved. And I have to flick back to this lead back because I don't have a delta between our lead drivers, which is rather unfortunate, but all I do know is it's very close between these two at the moment. Nothing between them, but there may be about to be even less gap between them, because with that mistake from Tinko, who half defends the inside line, enough of a shoulder shown towards that inside apex to make George Boothby think twice. But now, does he have the momentum? That's the wrong camera again. We're getting so caught up in the action, we can't direct the thing. Number 7 car trying to see if he can make a move towards turn 1, but he can't quite do it just yet, and the Audi survives another day. But now Jardier, previously was the one being hunted down, now has got the pressure in his favour, trying to see if he can find a way past his teammate, past the race leader. That was Trevor Wenham going a little bit wide on the exit of Druid's Corner then, and this is all bringing Robin Schranker into this one. Brands Hatch, what a circuit this is. We have to go here more often. Dom Healy still applying the pressure further down the order of Lucas Berg. Oh, he's got great momentum on the exit there. We'll go on board the rear wing if we can. Actual fact, I'm going to watch it from this man's perspective. Again, wrong camera towards the rear diffuser of the Aston Martin number 24 car, trying to see if he can find a way through, not quite managing to pull something off there. And seeing if it's Porsche, it's got different characteristics to a lot of other cars. It's good on the traction, good under braking acceleration, but it's usually lacking a bit of straight line speed. Valentin Barrier, though, in the McLaren, he got very close to Robin Schranker, who makes a mistake on the exit sheen curve there. Can't quite get the job done. But the Frenchman, who previously had fastest lap of this race, looking very, very quick. What about George Boothby? Still applying the pressure to your race leader. Only a quarter of the way through this race. And Tinko, if he has to uphold the level of defence for the entire duration, you can guarantee that he's going to have a little bit of sweat on his forehead. I imagine by the end of this one. Sim racing, although maybe not always quite so physical as a real thing, I can guarantee you that when you are having to sustain a pressure like this and you are wielding some of these high-end rigs and equipment, as well as that's a yellow flag for Niels Narks, who's gone into the gravel on the edge of Paddock Hill bend. What happened to him? A very experienced man inside the cockpit of that car, and it's gone wrong for the German driver one way or another. We'll try to see what happened. Was it a mistake that he made by himself? You can see he was behind Tansvinza Hacker at the time. So what goes wrong for Niels Narks? So they come in towards turn one and just gets it completely wrong on the entry. Very uncharacteristic error for the number 12 car, and you see them flying his way through was the McLaren, and almost Kevin Schwartz, a fellow German, trying to make a move up as well. So difficult day for the BMW driver, as he still remains then in P18. What about the battle at the front of the field? It's still Tinko using up all the grass and a bit more on the exit of that left-hander of Sterling's Corner. He seems comfortable enough with that line. Not sure if it's triggering any track limit warnings for him, so he needs to be careful about that, because if you get a track limit warning penalty, as Valentin Barrier makes a move down the inside of Robin Schranker, flashing the lights there. Is that to let him go? I'm not quite sure. Should maybe see if we can try to catch that one on the replay. Do I dare try to cut away from the action, because George Boothby almost pushing Tinko along, Valentin defending. No, I'm not going to do it. Sometimes I have to make these split-second decisions, just like the drivers, to work out whereabouts we're looking, because there's so much going on and you might miss a little bit more of the action. So Valentin does make his way through one way or another up into P7 for the number 13 car. Also, welcome so many people in the stream. Great to have you here for this incredible race, and I hope you're enjoying the action as much as I am, because this is a brilliant race and we have barely got started. There is just action top to bottom in this grid. Tinko van der Velde still holding on to the lead, still doing the local gardener's work, as George Boothby, he just looks a little bit more composed, but never quite in a position to make a move. Through sheen curve once again, both drivers absolutely towards the white line. You don't want to go any further than that, because it does start to unsettle the car very quickly. Robin Schranker, I think, may have done exactly that. He's gone wide. Hubert's gone by. Carpenter's trying to get by as well. Very close. Matteo Noel, the yellow flags ablaze up and down the order. Was trying to catch him bit by bit. Schranker, though, drops towards P10 then, and maybe in a position to reclaim position. Let's see with Noldy. I think Noldy dropped position to Manson and Tansvinza Hack as well. Robin Schranker trying to come back towards turn one there, but he can't make it stick. He'll have to sit in P10 for now. And just as I was saying, how deadly the grass can be around this circuit, unfortunately ends up catching out. And again, Trevor Wenham in the background, whilst he is in this lead train. See now the top six all very much together, and there's 5 McLarens, 2 of his train, all led by this pink Audi. And tell you what, if they keep battling the way that they are, it's going to become even busier, because Valentin, Huben, Carpenter and Schranker not that far behind in the grand scheme of things. Noah Reeder in his Mercedes in P13 at the moment, trying to apply the pressure to the fellow Mercedes car of Sasha Vassner. And we've got swapping of positions again. The recovery drive from Samuel Fox, trying to see if he can get past. He's managed to get past the Porsche of Dominic Bush, but seeing can he do anything about that Wild Things Aston Martin. Maybe an opportunity will appear in just a moment, but it looks like for the time being nothing is going to quite stick. Same goes for Noah Reader, and same for your lead group once again, as that Audi goes out onto the grass. Clearly a line that Tinko has practiced and he feels comfortable with. I can imagine scare the dear life out of me for doing that every single time. But this is why these guys are in the top split and I'm nowhere to be seen other than behind the microphone and shouting at them, because that is what I'm good at. This is what these guys are good at. Putting on a fantastic show. A little bit of a wide moment for Mishima, almost putting a wheel in the gravel. Close stuff between Sasha Vassner and Noah Reader once more towards the entry of turn 1, but he can't quite make a move stick just yet. But it does look like this Mercedes is applying the pressure bit by bit and seeing if he can get himself up into P12, but it is that LFM car that has remained there for the time being. What about as we head up towards Hawthorns once more, this big climb? Let's go on board the number 7 cars. That pit window opens, and that's going to be when these drivers think about, oh, is that a mistake for Sasha Vassner? Oscar Tringali in the Ferrari, trying to see if he can have something to say about it as well. We'll go on board. There we go. Finally made the right camera choice. The rear wing of Noah Reid as we look back at Tringali versus Vassner up towards Hawthorns, and down the inside of the Mercedes go, holds onto the position and manages to keep it. Can he, the Ferrari, trying to see if he can do anything about it, but he cannot. But what will our lead group? Does Tinko, who seems to overall, he's quick, but maybe lacking a little bit of pace and using the grunt of that car to his advantage, does he try to get the undercut and avoid anyone getting past him on strategy? Not quite just yet, but will we see anyone box at the very beginning of this race? It doesn't look like we're going to have any rain to deal with. And see Jardier and Grant is correct, very close in the background, but can't make anything happen at this point in time. And what about that 200 of you all watching at the same time? Welcome everybody, and buckle in for the remainder of this race, because it's not done yet. Teemu Karppinen having to defend from Robin Schwanker. He made a mistake, he dropped the positions, and now finds himself trying to see if he can recover his way further inside of the top 10. It was a compromised line for Teemu on the exit. A little bit of indecision there from Robin Schwanker on the entry towards this left hand before they round up towards Hawthorns Curve, and it looked like a good exit though for the McLaren as we go on board the front splitter of the number 6 car. You see towards the outside he goes. It's difficult to make a move stick here, and it's Lloyd's Radio behind who's getting a fantastic view of all the action. There's gravel that's being kicked up there. I don't think any casualties though in the grand scheme of things, and Robin Schwanker down the inside, and there's more 3 wide between them as they now head up in towards it. Come, surely they don't get through there safely somehow. It's all, there we go. I knew it was going to come eventually. Robin Schwanker finds the grass on the exit machine curve once more for a slightly different reason this time, but one way or another, Karppinen stays P9. Lloyd Rainier gets up into the top 10. Will Stewart have something to say about that? Very likely, as Trevor Wenham, there you go, the first man to go for this undercut strategy, is going to try to see if he can use those fresh tyres to his advantage and undercut this whole train. We've got Tinko, Boothby, Honzig, Karekas, Mishima, they're all ahead of him and will all very much be vulnerable, especially if they start to battle in any way, shape or form, because the undercut very powerful around here. You can see just based on Tinko's drive that if you've got track position, it's very difficult to make an overtake after that, especially when a lot of these cars will be identical, because there's quite the host of McLarens in this field, as Robin Schwanker versus Lloyd Rainier, as those two did the Frenchman allow Schwanker to retake the position. I'm not quite sure. Something I do know is that Toby Lang, oh my goodness, I got very scared for a second. That was going to be a dangerous rejoin. That is on the run in towards Graham Hill's bend and seems to have had quite a moment of sorts there for the German driver. Let's see what happened to him on the entry towards the left-hander. So he's got a little bit of company up ahead. Oh, that's a hardware failure. That's why it was looking so precarious, because I reckon he's about to reconnect his wheel. The steering is going to just spontaneously... Yep, I think that's exactly what's going there. Karekas, I can tell you, has boxed on this lap. So the reigning champion has decided that he doesn't want to allow the McLaren behind to gain too much of an advantage. That was a big slide for Toby Lang as we just cut away from him, but your leaders still as they were. But whereabouts is this man going to come out in relation to the first of our pitters of Trevor Wenham? Trevor Wenham very far away at the moment, still trying to come through the final sector, so we'll check back in a moment. These gaps have opened up just a little bit, not so much between our leaders, but parts of this train have spread out just a tad. So we'll see how it plays out once they start to emerge from the pits. Dominic Bush versus Dom Healy still going toe-to-toe, as Korekis now on the move, coming out of the pits as Trevor Wenham pushing the limits. And whereabouts is the British driver? This is going to give us an indication of how powerful the undercut actually is, because there is Korekis. It's only 1 lap difference, and it looks like the Lithuanian has just about managed to keep position and roughly the gap he had before. Meanwhile, the battle for what is now P7 has continued to rage on, and somehow Robin Schranker has found his way up into a position. Surely he didn't make the move at Hawthorne's curve. He's been trying to regain these spots for a while. I think Noah Reeder applying the pressure to Lois Rainier as we look at the replay. It was a wide moment for the Finnish driver. Robin Schranker said, I'm not hanging around. He takes a little bit of liberty again with the grass on the inside, and as a result finds his way up into what is now P7. Timo Carpenter, I can tell you, has also now come into the pits as well. Doesn't want to lose any more time in this squabbling, and Noah Reeder in that Mercedes not hanging around either as he continues to make positions up in this race. Maybe not the best qualifying pace, but is dialing that car in nicely for some good race pace as that McLaren of Lois Rainier. Frenchman trying to see if he can cut back at all. We know it's good up the hill. It's a good run from the number 10 car, but I don't think it's quite going to be good enough, and I'm going to have to cut away from that action because it's all kicking off further down the order again. What is now this little quadruplet of Sam Fock, Lucas Bergold, Dom Healy, Dominic Bush, all battling for position, and it doesn't matter where you are in this field, you are still very much involved in all the fights. For reference, Marco Bischoff started from the pit lane in P18 at the moment. That's not going to help him. I'll cut away from Marco. Let's get back to it as he goes exploring on that one. And there we go. Crucial there. George Boothby and sister teammate of Jardier both coming into the pits now, and they are going for this undercut. And surely Tinko has to react immediately, because we saw that based on Korekis versus Trevor Wenham, it didn't look like it had quite enough of a margin to put you under too much pressure. But if you allow it to go for too long and you put someone like George Boothby on fresh tyres when he has a chance of winning 2 out of 2 races at the beginning of this season, you can be sure that he's going to be putting you under pressure by the time you complete your pit stops. Dom Healy now comes into the pits. And also, that's another thing in itself, the pit lane. When these drivers are separated by just tenths of a second, the pit lane entry, how you time your stop, how you get the car stops and going again, is all crucial, valuable time. These guys in the top split, they're not just practicing how to go around the main bit of the circuit, they're practicing how to go in the slow bit as well, because those elements really can have a major effect, as well as Kevin Schwartz seems to be... He's pulled over to the side of the road. He has got going again, so some sort of technical issue, I can only assume, for him. And there's the undercut power, because Korekis has got in front of Jardier. Trevor Wenham hasn't quite managed to go with him, but he's very, very close. And you can see the undercut. It is working, it is powerful, and it can gain you positions. And that now allows Korekis to push on. And surely, if you're Tinko and he has come into the pits, so has the likes of Omashima. Valentine has decided to go for the overcut strategy. So has Nicholas Huben. They're wanting to try to be that bit quicker at the end of the race. But the question is, how fast is George Boothby going? And I'll tell you what, George Boothby, I don't know if he had a slow pit stop or if there's a penalty someone applied to him, but he's come out behind the train. So George Boothby, one way or another, will not be leading this race once Tinko comes out of the pits. So it's all going to be about whether or not Korekis, how special is this young man feeling after such a dominant season in Season 10. Trying to push on now for potentially an opportunity to get a race win, the first race win for him of the season. Will it be Veloce McLaren's? back-to-back, because it doesn't look like right now it's going to go the way of George Boothby. Where is Tinko? He's just emerging. There's the cars coming towards turn 1 now. Is the number 14 going to come back out in the lead? I think he might have done just about enough, but those cars behind, those tyres are going to be warmer, and arguably the McLaren has looked like the faster cars. So Tinko, he needs to get these tyres dialed in immediately if he wants to survive the attack over the next couple of laps from Grantas Carreras. But remarkably then, it is Tinko that's still your net race leader, with Carreras, Jardier, Wenham and Boothby in your top 5, with Omashima, the Japanese driver that went for that slight overcut strategy, hasn't quite pulled off for him. He still has fastest lap of the race, but you can see valuable seconds has been lost for the Japanese drivers. Dominic Bush now comes out of the pits, and you can see again the undercut has worked very nicely for Dom Healy, as he looks to retain his position and open up quite a gap, as most drivers now looking to complete their pit stop, because you have to be so wary of whether or not you are going to be undercut, because it stacks up very quickly. So Tinko, you see again, he's using that wide line on the exit, and Carreras is absolutely glued to his gearbox. It may be a different Veloce McLaren, but I tell you what, the stress and the fear inside the Dutchman's head is going to be all the same, because he now has to keep an eye a little bit of weaving, trying to break the toe towards turn 1. You can get away with a little bit of that, but he's got to be careful not to do it excessively. Valentine comes out of the pits now, and he rejoins just behind George Boothby, but crucially ahead of Omashima. And if George Boothby, who maybe just has a little bit more pace than the Frenchman, can pull him along, especially if these drivers scrap at the front of this pack, then we will very much be on the cards for having a 6-way fight kicking off once more for the race lead. But it is still the Audi fending off the swarm of the McLarens, which very much observed in the chat is definitely quite the packed field for the British outfit. We've gone from having none of them at all to having quite the abundance of these cars. Simon Fock trying to apply the pressure to Jan Drexler in the BMW. The last of the cars that haven't come in for a pit stop yet, as Huben, Rainier, Niles all come into the pits as well. That's why we saw the BMW in the background earlier on, because coming across cars that are almost a lap down in this field. But Samir now comes into the pits, as it will be Carreras has made a mistake, and Jardier and now Trevor Wenham trying to make their way through. We're trying to catch it on the replay, but it's Trevor Wenham trying to go down the inside, and Veloce's chances of a McLaren victory starts to head favour to the sister team, the Yassi driver. I don't think I'm going to be able to catch a mistake, because here comes George Boothby trying to go around the outside of his teammate. Towards turn 1 they go, almost 3 abreast through Paddock Hill Bend. Can he go for the cutback, trying to get the power down? He has to back out on the exit. Late move of defence from his teammate towards the outside. He has to go, and what was looking like a potential win for either of these cars suddenly drops out of contention. Valentine progressively getting more in the mix, and now out of all of the McLarens, it's Jardier within a second of Tinko, with Trevor Wenham behind. But Wenham, I think right now, is more worried about what is filling up his mirrors, because he has the 2 Veloce McLarens to deal with of Carreras, followed by Boothby. Unfortunately, aren't going to be able to catch up and see what happened there. Yellow flag for Manson, who's just retired from the race. I'm not sure what happened to the Swedish driver, but unfortunate stuff for him, as Tinko, we'll have to see. We'll try to catch up with these stewards in a moment, because if there was an incident between himself and Carreras, I'm sure that we will be hearing about it very shortly. But Jardier right now, he has a second in front of him, a second behind, as again that Audi applying the pressure. Robin Schwanker in the gravel, not for the first time, and a different place for the German driver this time around. I think I might just about going to gamble on it, see if we can catch up with what happened here for the German driver, who has since pulled over and just drops a little bit of time to the cars ahead. They were coming in towards Hawthorns, applying the pressure to Noah Reid. That was Lloyd Rainier in the McLaren up ahead. Oh, by looks of it, just completely misjudged the entry, blinded on the apex towards the next right-hander. I think that was Westfields they were coming up to, and Robin Schranker manages to keep it going, but far from an ideal line for him, as what was that? There was somebody there who was looking to try and make a move. I need to catch up with this because we've got Koreka still trying to apply the pressure. Their leaderboard is jumping up and down just a little tad. Albin Matson suddenly reappeared entirely, so maybe it was a connection issue. Thankfully, the number 19 car still very much in the server. As see, even inside, whether you're in the top 15, the top 20, the top 30, it doesn't matter because you are still on for a glorious race. It is saying here that Manson hasn't done his pit stop. I'm not 100% convinced by that. We'll see how the rest of the stint plays out. As Tinko and Van der Velde is your effective race leader. We still have Jan Drexler, who's staying out very long in the number 30 BMW. He's deciding to go for a big overcut strategy and seeing if he can bring it back later on in the race. It can sometimes work, especially if you have that excessive battling. If you can capitalize on drivers having a little bit of a difficult time on their undercuts, and you arrive on the scene with massively fresher tyres, even if you don't have the outright pace perhaps over those around you, the sheer tyre advantage, especially around a place like this, can be just that little bit that you need to make up the positions. Trevor Wenham still holding on for what is effectively the last of the podium spots, as Omashima again is your fastest man on circuit. 22.655 from the Japanese drivers. He looks trying to bring himself back into the mix, and that's a mistake from Trevor Wenham. And will that be all the invitation that Korekis and potentially even George Boothby need? Closing all the way up towards Hawthorns. He's looking up the inside. He thought about it, but Trevor Wenham, he's a wise cookie. He is not going to allow the McLaren to make a move like that. So he holds on for the time being, and you see it's difficult to follow through these fast corners. And in actual fact, it goes from Korekis being the one trying to make a move to having to be a little bit more conscious of not just George Boothby, but also Valentin Barrier hanging around in his rear view mirrors. We don't know what happened to Valentin there. I will still try to catch up if I can with Stewart's inquiries at some point, but it's just chaos up and down the field. Okay, we're going to gamble on a strategy of our own now, as Jardier crucially gaining tenths again. He's only 4 tenths away from Tinko. So these McLarens continuing to look fast, but we've seen how well Tinko's been able to hold on to the race lead previously. Can he do it again? Or will Jardier be the one to be able to make a move? Because right now he is looking incredibly competitive. Oh my goodness, stewards have definitely been busy. Right, so 10-second penalty for number 28. That was Manuel Fuchs, who retired from the session earlier for causing a collision. And then I think we had a penalty also, a second one maybe dished out for the Mercedes driver that was abandoned after he left the session. 27 got a 10-second time penalty. That belonged to Philip Engman. And that, in actual fact, is the only penalties that have been dished out in the service. So a lot of incidents as Marco Bischoff sends on up the inside of the man that we were just mentioning in his fellow Lamborghini, as Marco continues to make his way up towards the top 20. Great stuff from the two-time Pro Series champion, who's currently got all the twos in the little overlay. The number 2 car in P22, trying to see if he can make moves up the field. He may be about to make one more, and it doesn't look like anyone else is on for one at the moment, so we'll gamble go on board with the German driver in this newfound Lamborghini for the K. Kramer Racing Esports car. He's been very successful in the Porsche in the past. He's been the benchmark at times in that car, but now has decided to make the switch over to the Italian outfit and show a bit of love to the Raging Bull. Can he make a move on the Aston Martin of Voltec Neuwirth? Pit window ending very, very shortly. Drexler still out. Manson still showing as having not done his pit stop. And Van der Velde crucially still keeping the likes of Jardier behind. 3 seconds now is the gap between Wenham and Jardier. So it really is a battle between those two. At the front of the pack, Marco Bischoff gaining down the start-finish straight. As you see the deltas moving around. Not a swap of position in the end. But confident on the exit of turn 1, looking up the inside. He is going to send up the inside. There's contact. Neuwirth close the gap. It's all got very busy. Philip Engman is wondering what on earth is going on through here as he's trying to make his way past the Aston Martin. I'm sure the stewards will be looking at that one around the outside. The Swedish driver goes. That's a good move. Capitalising on the action up ahead. as also Dominic Bush comes into the pits as well to retire from the service. I'm not quite sure what ends up happening for him, nor do I know what has happened. Oh my goodness, Matteo Naldi rejoining the circuit. Nils Knox, lightning reactions from the number 12 car there. What on earth happened between those? Jan Drexler does finally come into the pits. I desperately want to try to see if I can look at what happens to Naldi there. I think I've got the opportunity to do it. You can see that was Robin Schranker that was right on the gearbox. It's going to be dangerous making a move there up in towards Hawthorne's curve, face for the bridge as ever, and I don't think there was contact. I think Matteo Naldi just ended up flying across the circuit. And Nils Knox did extremely well to avoid that one, and thankfully they all made it through there relatively unscathed in the grand scheme of things, as the camera doesn't quite catch up with the cars as they make their way by. But in the battle for the lead then, it is Jardier still trying to apply the pressure onto Tinko van der Velde in the Audi that has led since the very start of this race. Only a couple laps led for Jan Drexler. Of course, doing that overcut strategy. We'll have to see how that works out for the BMW driver as this trade of cars for McLarens within a second of one another. And Onishima, the Japanese driver, the man that just set the fastest lap of the race again, as I saw a kick of the grass. Thankfully, no harm done by the looks of it from our top two. But the Japanese driver continuing to find pace. Maybe isn't quite as involved in this fight as he would have imagined that he could have been, but 22.4 last time around, extremely good pace from this man that we're on board with at the moment. 2 to 3 tenths faster than anyone else ahead of him. Jardier close enough now to even get the leaderboard in a bit of a pickle of who is leading this race. It is still Tinko van der Velde, but there is nothing to choose between these two cars as Jardier trying to see if he can send a move up towards the inside. He does that so often where he doesn't really commit to the move. He's braking in anticipation of getting it stopped. Meanwhile, Robin Schranker versus Tans Winterhacker towards turn 1. Looks like McLaren is going to get that one done and goes up into P14. Number 6 car continuing his recovery drive, but Jardier, he does that so often where he'll show the nose to the inside. He's braking with the intention of making the corner, whether or not the car in front falls for the dummy. But it just unsettles you, and whether or not you open the gap entirely or if you just end up making a bit of a mistake, that's all this man needs, an invitation. Very, very wise head on those shoulders, and he knows how to race. So right now he has a good opportunity at getting his first victory in a while in the Pro Series, as again, maybe showing a bit more confidence now over the Sheen curve there than he was earlier. A bit more dialed in with this car, and without that pressure from behind, it's all eyes forward and full push on ahead for the number 3 car. And you see, big gap now towards Trevor Wenham, who is trying to keep behind the likes of Korekas, Boothby, Valentine Barrier, trying to see if he can stop the reigning champion, one of the winningest drivers in Pro Series history, and Valentine, who is a man that he's been on the podium multiple times. I think may actually have one race win to his name, if I recall correctly, but he's certainly been at the top of the standings, or very close to it, on a number of occasions. So it's certainly a difficult bunch of cars to keep behind you. And each of these cars, of course, being the McLarens, there's nothing to choose between them. But George Boothby doing exactly what I was going to say, applying the pressure to his teammate, will go on board with Valentine. He's getting a great view of Korekas off on the grass. No love lost between the two Veloce McLarens, and Korekas gets shuffled down to what is now 6th place. Valentine says, thank you very much, lads, up into P5. George Boothby, will he be under investigation from the stewards? I'm sure he will be. Whether or not they give him a penalty, we'll have to wait and see. But the race that was looking potentially very favourable for the British driver to make it 2 race wins in a row at the start of this season is looking a little bit shakier as time goes on, much like Tinko van der Velde, who I think even for his standards of race today has actually gone exploring a bit further than he has previously on the exit as Sterling's there and has managed to put it all together. And he continues to lead in this race ahead of this group of cars, as now down towards turn 1. Valentine still applying the pressure to George Boothby ahead in little bits into the gravel. We'll keep an eye on these stewards' inquiries. Currently no further action taken on any instance, but I'm sure they are catching up bit by bit. In actual fact, so for reference, they're around 10 minutes behind. They do a fantastic job our wonderful beloved stewards in this championship, but they will be getting around to these incidents when they can, because there's been quite a few of them. White flag out for Maternaldi on the exit of turn 1 there, as he loses a bit of momentum on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend, but he does gather it all up in the end. George Boothby now applying the pressure to Trevor Wenham. He can't catch a break, the poor man. He gets one Veloce McLaren for another, which was much a situation for the leading Audi of Tinko van der Velde up until Jardier in the Yas Heat car slotted in there. A little bit of gravel. You can see tyre markings for a few cars there as Tinko, that characteristic line, he's very comfortable taking a chunk of that curb. Further down the order, Oscar Tringali trying to apply the pressure to Sasha Vassner, who's got Albin Manson in tow. And it's a good showing for some of these guys. The likes of Oscar, also Felix Tanzvin's a hacker as well, Omashima too. The numbers that you see on these guys' cars reflect their relative elo within the server, which means if you see a car number that's far higher than their position, it means that these drivers are performing extremely well to what would have been anticipated in this system. And Trevor Wenham maybe not anticipating the dive from George Boothby, as Valentine again trying to see if he can go through on the back of a move from the number 7 car. It's not going to happen this time around, and George Boothby then gets himself back into the podium places with Trevor Wenham, Valentine Barrier all in hot pursuit, and Korekis now under pressure from what is still the fastest man on circuit other than your top 2, the Japanese driver of Omashima, trying to see if he can get himself up in towards P6. Unable to do so at this point in time, but very close between your leaders still, although maybe the gap just opened up a little bit over last lap. Jardier was still faster on the previous lap, but maybe a mistake from the number 3 car. Number 14 just able to stretch his legs a little bit. Aaron Manson, I'm fairly confident, has made his pit stop now, so we'll get rid of the slightly confusing graphic on that side of things, because everybody has served their stops and is now just in full send mode, trying to see how can they get themselves as far up the order as possible in the closing stages of this race. Valentine Barrier senses an opportunity towards turn 1. He's got the slipstream. He's got the speed advantage towards the inside. He goes. Trevor Wenham maybe about to lose another one. Oh, a hair's width between them as we're on board the front splitter of the Frenchman's car towards the outside. He now has to go. Nils Niles trying to make a move onto Tasman's hacker. Deep on the brakes was Trevor Wenham. Valentine, I think, was trying to hold the outside line. The British driver got it all wrong, but the Frenchman does end up managing to go through in the end. Nils Niles does take the position away from Tanzvin's hacker in the fellow pink Audi in the field for Team Hymo. As now, Korekis is the next car in line, trying to recover a position as he brings Omashima in tow, and Trevor Wenham maybe struggling a little bit at this stage of the race. I've got to check further down the order, though, because inside the top 20, now Marco Bischoff down the inside of Valentin Goppelt in the number 16 McLaren, and continues his surge through the field from the pit lane. Great stuff from him, as Trevor Wenham has managed to hold onto that spot for now. What about our race leaders? As Tinko, that's a white to see. He's got in a while, and you can see it's not paid dividends this time around, because Jardier trying to see if he can capitalise. Still not enough to get an overlap on the car that he sees ahead of him, but enough to put the man that has led this race basically from the start of the race. He did a phenomenal job in qualifying, and he has withstood the pressure of just about every lead McLaren in this field, but you can see the pair of them struggling with those rear tyres, and again the McLaren showing his nose towards the inside, not really being full for a natural fact, got a bit close to the curve that time around, but this is the closest that the number 3 car has been to potentially making a move. But there you heard the hesitation, and there won't be an overtake made there. But what about Tanzvin's hacker versus Matteo Noldi? The Audi has gone down the order continuously over the last few laps. He has a big slide on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend, not enough to give the McLaren an opportunity towards Druids, but the battle continues on, much like for Carpenter and Schwartz in the 2 Lamborghinis further down the order for 23rd and 24th place, as they look to try to make a move on the Aston Martin of Votek Neuwirth potentially in the upcoming laps. Back with your leaders by 4.2 seconds now is the gap down. George Boothby and Jardier still applying the pressure. How do they fare through Sterling's this time around? The pair of them actually taking the leaf out of Tinko's book there, but isn't able to get enough of a run towards the final turn once more of Clearways. What about Korekis versus Trevor Wenham. You see Valentine has managed to escape a little bit up the road, currently sitting in P4, maybe even a podium if the number 7 car, who has got a 5-second penalty. So Valentine right now just has to sit within a 5 seconds of George Boothby in P3, and he will get a podium, and potentially so will the likes of Trevor Wenham and Karekas Omashima, all potentially benefiting. Even Huben down in P8 from the penalty that George Boothby has been handed for that contact with his teammates, and I'm sure there'll be some words in the Veloce camp afterwards between those two cars as Nordi sends one up the inside of Tanzer de Hacker, who has been struggling over the last few laps. Dare I say, if we can have a look, I think we might be able to gamble on it, so we'll try to see how did the man has been trying to make this move for a few laps now finally get the job done. You can see Tanzer de Hacker, he was continuing to lose pace in that car and didn't have the advantage towards the first turn, but are we about to see a little bit of a crossover? Oh, he's just got deep. It's like an actual, just like a flash. The McLaren has actually made his way through. Almost exactly the same mistake to what Nils Narks made earlier on in the BMW towards turn 1 there, just not managing to get the car stopped, and then you are just at the mercy of trying to stay out of the gravel trap on the entry. 10 minutes left to go then in this race, which has been action-packed from start to finish. Jardier still applying the pressure, but it is a little bit in favour pace-wise to the man ahead of him in that bright pink Audi, who is on for a very good result, one of his best drives that I've seen from him, if he can pull this one through to the end, because it hasn't looked like he's been the car that's had the best pace overall, but he has driven absolutely beautifully, but he still has to put it together for 10 more minutes. We'll have about 8 laps or so of a racing, perhaps a little bit optimistic on that front actually, maybe about 7 laps of racing left after what has been a very, very dramatic session. Karek is still applying the pressure to Trevor Wenham in this fight inside the top 5. They've got to be careful not to battle too much though, otherwise they will lose out on benefiting from George Boothby's penalty, as meanwhile Kevin Schwartz has sent one up the inside of Teemu Karppinen, who has been unable to respond by the time they get to Druid's corner then. So how did the German driver get that one done? He saw him showing the nose already towards the inside. We've gone on board with the Lamborghini. It's a big slide for Karppinen. Grip hacks engineering perhaps, but grip was certainly not what that car had on the exit of Clearways, and it was side-by-side stuff between those two. You see Neuwirth on board his rear wing, had a great view of all of this. Robin Schranker in the meantime, I think, has made a mistake, has kept it going, but is in a little bit of trouble, I believe, currently in a P14, and has dropped some of the gap that he was currently previously reeling in to Albin Manson ahead. Someone else is on the move though, Oscar Tringali in the number 23 Ferrari, seeing what he can do about the Mercedes just in front of him, looking up the inside towards the first turn, can't get it done, and natural fact goes a little bit wide, and the Mercedes will be able to breathe a sigh of relief for just a moment. Meanwhile, your race leaders still separated by a few tenths of a second, and Huben actually, he does make a slight mistake on the left-hander of Surtees up the hill. But that car, definitely not the fastest on base day, but again, Mr. Consistency, long championship, and definitely opportunities as the fellow Mercedes in the grid. Oh, it's all kicking off. Oscar Tringali trying to get out the inside. I think there's been an instance with Kevin Schwartz further down the order, as Sasha Vassler looks like he is going to hold onto the position for now. What on earth happened to the German driver further down, because he was in the middle of trying to make an overtake onto Voltek Neuwirth, who has kept the position. So towards turn 1 they go. You see Teemu nowhere to be seen in this fight, so it's going to be a big, big lunge. My goodness, that's a lunge and a half, and into the gravel he goes. And Neuwirth doing a pretty good job, it must be said, to hold on to that one. Tanzvin Hackers brought out the yellow flag in the meantime. I'm not sure what jeopardy the number 25 car has found himself in. I think has just dropped it through Sheen Curve, but hasn't lost any positions as a result. Sasha Vassler still under pressure from Oscar Tringali in that Ferrari 296, but unable to do anything about that car behind him. Manson hunting all around the back of this group, checking in on penalties. Nothing further to add since that last penalty for George Boothby. An update on the gaps: Valentine, Wenham and Korekis and Omashima, I believe, would all just about still manage to benefit from his penalty. I don't know if Huben will in this particular case. Meanwhile, the man has been making up an abundance of positions, having started all the way down in the pit lane, has got himself up in towards P18, and this is going to be a beautiful move. I have the impression towards the outside he goes. Is he going to go for the cutback? Fantastically judged on the power, using the improved speed on corner exit down the inside in towards Druids, and once you've got that inside line, it's very difficult for the car behind to come back from that, and a very spotless move there done by the two-time champion, who maybe have a little bit of a difficult day overall in the office, but has certainly put on a good few overtakes and a bit of a show for all of us. This entire grid has put on quite the show for this stream, and this is what we have always come to expect from this championship. 6 minutes left to go then, so just a few laps remaining. Tinko Van der Velde still leading, but dropped 0.3 of a second last time round to Jardier, who was the fastest man on track. So he dropped away a little bit. It looked like maybe was that McLaren starting to give up, but man has won plenty of races in his sim racing career. Try and see if he can make it another one to his tally. He's been getting this McLaren dialed in more and more in recent weeks. And what a way it would be to top things off with a win in this fantastic split. Some of the best drivers that you can find on ACC here. And it was proven in qualifying with the margins that we saw, and it's been absolutely justified in the race with just so close between each of these drivers. Korekis still applying the pressure to Trevor Wenham through the right-hander of Sheen Curve. So difficult to follow through there. Omashima very much still in the mix as well. Jardier still lurking around a few tenths behind Tinko. What was the lap times last time around? It's another half a tenth. It's not much, but it's just enough. And you keep that up bit by bit, and all of a sudden you just have that little bit more of a toe effect, a little bit more slipstream that can help you make up a move, as he again shows the nose towards the inside line. Didn't quite have enough of an overlap or a close-up gap to make a lunge there, but will we see some last lap sends? I have a feeling we'll see at least one in the field, whether or not it be for the lead or somewhere further down the order. These drivers all going toe-to-toe. Remember, there's some wonderful prizes on offer at the end of the season, as Huben has trying to go around the outside of Omashima. That would be an incredible move if he can do that. It's going to be a drag race now between these two as they head up towards Hawthorne's got Mercedes trying to stay there, but he can't quite maintain the overlap. So a potential mistake from the Japanese driver, giving an opportunity to the number 4 car. The man who finished runner-up in the standings last season, but couldn't quite make the move stick on that occasion. But he has allowed the gap to break away. That's Neuwirth into the wall. Neuwirth into the wall on the exit. Kevin Schwartz, the win into the back, does manage to get it stopped before rejoining in front of other cars. I'll just quickly check on the lead battle. I think we might be all right. It's difficult to tell from time to time. Let's see if we can catch up with what happens here. It was all kicking off all the way from turn 1 through in towards Druid. You see Kevin Schwartz looking one way, looking the other. Timu sending it down the inside, gets the nose there, and then from here, oh, it's a bit of a wide moment for Neuwirth, and then planting it straight into the wall. Manages to stop himself from rejoining too harshly in front of Jimmy Holm, who goes up into 24th place. But disaster for Neuwirth there, and again, potentially, I think something on the cards for the stewards to be having a close look at. 3 minutes left to go. We'll have to see what time is, as Nicholas Huben has got a big margin to Lloyd Rainier behind, but I think that is the opportunity for P7 and also potentially P6 as well out the window and gone, because that extra scrapping has not benefited him. Trevor Wenham and Grant Korekis. Grant Korekis is currently 0.1 seconds within the margin that he needs in order to benefit from George Boothby's penalty, so he's there or thereabouts. Timo Karppinen and Kevin Schwartz, again, the two Lamborghinis battling close on circuit, but not quite close enough to see a swappings of position. And we will have 2 more laps after this set. It's pretty close on the timer, but it will be 2 more laps, including this next one. Jardier absolutely nose to tail with the man that has sustained such a high amount of pressure during this race and still trying to find a way to make a move. He was a little bit slower last time around, and the Audi has just remained composed. He's done everything he needed to do. Meanwhile, battle from P11 to P14, hotting up between Vassar, Tringali, Manson, Schwanker, and Niels Nars, also bringing the likes of Naldi in the background as well. So potential opportunities as Tringali setting one on the inside for a brief moment there. Couldn't quite get stuck. The Mercedes getting on the brakes in the middle of the apex, losing momentum. Oh, I thought that was going to give her just about enough for the Ferrari driver to send one up the inside of Druids, but couldn't quite do it. I want to stay in P12 for the time being. What about Jardier? Following on, we'll go on board with him as he's been staring at this pink Audi for a long old time. Arguably has had just that little bit of extra pace, but Tinko's done everything that he's needed to do so far. George Boothby showing also why he was so quick in this race. So is Valentine, actually. Valentine, fastest off the bunch last time around, 22.8 from the Frenchman. Good pace from him. Maybe not quite in contention for the win, as Tringali still applying the pressure to Sasha Vassner with this four-way fight for P11, but they will round out the final lap, but it's close again between these two. It's not over and done with just yet. This will be the last lap of the race then. Tinko van der Velde, can he hold on for one more lap, or will Jardier add one more Pro Series race to his tally? Does he send it here? Does he show a nose to try to force him into making a mistake? He does, and he has managed to force a small error, but I'm not sure it benefited him overall in the end. He'll have to try to see if he can do something up in towards the middle sector, but it's so tricky to make a move stick there, and Tinko has withstood pressure for this entire race. It's going to take something pretty special to make the Dutch driver crack. Meanwhile, Oscar Tringali trying to go for the cutback on the exit. In actual fact, maybe under pressure now from Manson towards Druid's curve. Can't make that one stick either, so this group still staying as they were as well. It's been non-stop action from start to finish in this race. Says Tinko, through Hawthorns he goes, in towards the likes of Westfields. Just a few more corners. This is the tricky one, though. This is the crunch point. How's he fare through Sheen Curve over the crest? He survives that one more time. This has been an interesting corner for the number 14 car. Very wide lines throughout the entire race. Again for Jardier as well, as he continues to push on all the way to the start-finish line, but it's not going to be enough, I don't think, for number 3 car. And after withstanding some of the biggest amounts of pressure I've seen in this championship, Tinko van der Velde is going to win here at Brands Hatch for round 2 of the Cage King Pro Series in Season 11. Jardier finishes P2. George Boothby recovers to P3, although we will see the effects of his penalty in a moment. Valentine P4. Wenham does hold on to P5 as the scrap with Korekas. And in actual fact, I think those two scrapping has allowed Boothby to hold on to some extra positions. This will scrap further down the order. They've dropped Robin Schwanker, who's been reeled in by Niels Narks, but I don't think there's going to be any changes of position in this final lap from those guys. What about this lot? Engman, Goffbelt, Simonov, all toe-to-toe as well around the tail end of the top 20, but they're going to finish as they look to be at the moment, with Simonov in that number 29 leading this trio across the line. What about Kevin Schwartz versus Carpenter? And these two have had a busy race, but it is going to be the Finnish driver that leads ahead of the German across the line. And the last scrap, Sammy Fock versus Voltec Neuwirth, who's had quite the difficult time in this race. We'll see if any late penalties are applied. And a 5-second penalty for Kevin Schwartz was given for that contact, and we'll have to see about the margins, how that plays out. I don't think it's quite going to promote the number 34 of Jimmy Holm, though, up a position. And then the last car to come across the line, I do believe, is Luca Vinia. No, we do actually have someone else in the server. Can't quite see them. Lucas Bergod, who has now just crossed the line with all of that. But my goodness, Tinko van der Velde, take a bow. It's not often that you see drivers withstand pressure for that long and that composed. It looked like he was always just on a knife edge, but it was a comfortable knife edge, weirdly. I've never seen someone take such an excessive amount of grass time and time again, but not really suffer the consequences of it. And he mastered that corner. He mastered how to place his car and drove a very, very good race. A huge congratulations for Tinko, which what I think may potentially be his first win in the Pro Series. He has been with us here before and has certainly been at the pointier end of the grid, but that could well be his first win. So one way or another, big congratulations to your race winner from today, after what has been a fantastically packed bit of action for us all race long. We'll have a look at the results in just a moment, and also hopefully, if we are lucky, maybe we may even get a couple of interviews. Of course, if you do happen to have a little bit of contact with those that may want to pop in for an interview, feel free to give them a nudge. It's always good to speak to our drivers, and we do in actual fact have the race winner of this week. Now, here comes the question: can I actually sort out the audio for this week? Hopefully, if we get everything in place, we will hopefully be good to go. Fingers crossed. So we will look to bring in Tinko in just a second to hear from the man that's taken victory here, and there we go. So Tinko van der Velde, your winner from round 2, joining for an interview. Lovely to have you here, Tinko, and you must be delighted with that one.
Hello guys. Oh yeah, man, I'm so happy.
It's just you had you had the world looking at you, and you had about every McLaren on the grid possible in your rearview mirror. I have never seen such a long-term amount of pressure. I mean, of course, we know how talented behind the wheel you are, but I think even from your perspective, that must feel pretty special to keep behind the likes of Boothby, Carreras, Jardier, all sustain that pressure, and all any time that they went to make a potential move. It's so difficult because of the way in which, if you go offline, it's maybe not just one car that comes through, it could be 3, the way that these fields play out. So, what was it like being inside the cockpit of that car for an hour of just pure intense racing?
Yeah, like you say, it was crazy. I think I've never sweated so much in a race. I don't even know what to say, to be honest. I think that's literally one of my best races ever, because that pressure was insane. And also this car on tire wear, it's really horrible and so hard to drive, so I'm really proud of what I did today. Yeah, you can see just all those McLarens are crazy fast in the race, so it was hard.
Absolutely. I mean, I did actually make mention of the fact that I thought you might have a bit of a sweat on with that race. Anyway,
it's literally swimming pool. I see it right now.
It's and I was explaining to the chat of exactly whilst yes, sim racing may be physically not quite as exerting at times is a real thing, that doesn't mean that you don't get a sweat on in these races, because when you've got talent like that that's in your rearview mirror for an hour straight, I have no shadow of a doubt, Tinko, that they're working up a sweat during that one. But you dealt with it fantastically, and like I say, even tackling the weaknesses in your car, but also capitalizing on its advantages. It looked like that Audi, despite those McLarens being firmly planted in the toe, you always just had enough of a grunt, especially down start finish straight and up the hill as well, to deal with that. Did it feel like that in the car, that you were able to make advantage of horsepower to keep those behind?
Yeah, definitely. The Audi is one of the best cars on acceleration in the game, so that definitely helped to just be slightly quicker on the straights here and not have them like a good chance to overtake me. But that also trades in that it's a bit worse on traction and in corners, so it's really tough to stay on track, especially here with runs, like you said, like 1 millimeter to the left of where you drive and you're in the grass and you go straight, lose so many positions. So yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah, and I have to, seeing as I've got you here, I have to ask you one question. The exit of Sterling's every lap, that cambered left-hander, the amount of lawn mowing that you were doing for the local gardeners was pretty special sometimes. I mean, I think there were a couple of occasions where maybe it went a bit too far. It did look like there were a couple of times where you lost a bit of momentum, but for the most part, it seemed like a very sort of proven and practiced line for you. Was that kind of the plan all along, or was that just where you found the Audi kind of drifting to during the race?
Yeah, that was my normal racing line actually. So yeah, Audi's not bad on grass. They just need to use every bit of track I can to to take speed on the track. So yeah, that was my normal line. Although I think it did cost me also a tire wear. The grass, it was not good. But I've been practicing taking the grass line the whole time, so it's hard to just change that.
Yeah, of course. It's it's always a trade-off with these sorts of things. But yeah, amazing stuff from you today, and yeah, fantastic drive from you. And next week, when we are heading to, if I do my little bit of checking, because I can't quite remember, for round 3. Sadly, I won't be here to present it on stream, but we will be going to Valencia for the next round of the Pro Series. So how do you think that might fare for the Audi?
Well, sadly, I won't be there either because I'm going. I'm going to the Nürburgring in real life. So.
Oh well, I think that's a fair excuse. That sounds like a pretty exciting venture on that front. So yes, unfortunately, a pair of us will be missing Valencia on that front. But I'm sure maybe perhaps further down the line in the season we'll have a good old catch up here in the commentary box with up the kind of rounds. But yeah, well, fantastic drive from you today, Tinko, and a big thank you for joining us in the comms box, and enjoy whatever you're up to at Nürburgring. Amazing stuff, and always a demonstration to those in the audience, the crossover between sim and reality on that front. So yeah, do enjoy yourself there, and look forward to hopefully talking to you again in the future.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Cheers, Tinko. Fantastic there to hear from your race winner from tonight, and amazing, we also have a second person that's come in for an interview, and I'll be 100% honest, I don't quite know who it is. Their Discord name is not particularly helpful, but we will bring them in for a chat. So I'll be 100% honest, I don't quite know who you are in the field, so do you want to introduce yourself? That went fantastically well. Can you hear me okay, Amit, in Discord? I think this may be a dead end, and I think we'll abandon that one, unfortunately. So we won't have a second interview by the looks of it for today. I didn't quite recognise the name in the Discord, and I don't think perhaps he went in the wrong chat room. I'm not quite sure. But one way or another, fantastic stuff from our drivers today, and can also flurry through our official race results as well. So Tinko taking the win ahead of Jardier and Valentine, with George Boothby penalty only demoting him to P4 in the end. Still very close in the championship, with Wenham, Korekis, Omashima, Huben, Renia, Ida rounding out top 10, Vasa, Tringali, Manson, Schwanker, and Narks going to the tail end of the top 15. Nordi, Tamzin, Zahaka, Bischoff recovering up to P18. Good job from him from the pit lane. Simonov, Engman, Goppelts, Karpinen, Holm, Schwartz, Neuwirth, Fock, Drexler, Wieninger, Bergold, and Healy to the tail end of the top 30. And then your DNS from today: Dominic Bush, Toby Lang, Manuel Fuchs, and Leonardo Pagano. From that one. So unfortunate for those drivers that did end up departing slightly early from the session, but this circuit is definitely very intense in terms of what it can bring in terms of racing action, and it's a big challenge for drivers, and we saw that in great abundance here this evening in this race. But an absolutely fantastic display from our top split in the Pro Series as always. And like I mentioned, unfortunately, I will be away next week, so we'll not be able to bring you coverage from Valencia for round 3. But do head over to the LFM Twitch channel of Low Fuel Motorsport, the twitch.tv/Low Fuel Motorsports, where you can see our German friends doing the stream over there if you want to keep up with the broadcast and action from that round, where they will have 90 minutes of that circuit, which is going to be an intense one as well. Very hot temperatures usually, very fast circuit, and similar to almost like a bit of a flatter version of Brands Hatch. Very high load corners continuously, and takes a lot out of the tyres. So we'll have to see how our drivers fare for that one when we regroup at round 4. For what will be Indianapolis in a couple of weeks' time, and see how the championship is faring by that point in time. Also, slightly higher chances of rain next week as well, so much to look forward to on all that front. And if you have enjoyed what you have seen tonight, and it was great to see so many in the chat and joining us for this evening's action, and you fancy a little bit of a taste of the action yourself and a chance to win some of these amazing prizes, then head over to lowfuelmotorsport.com, get yourself a license and sign up to the platform. You can work your way up through the ranks and either compete in those wonderful daily races and also then work your way into these other series like the Pro Series, the Endurance. I think there's also some other goodies going on as well. We have special events running throughout the season as well. So much to look forward to on that world of ACC. And if maybe GT3 isn't quite your cup of tea and you fancy either something with less contact or more contact, whether it be open wheelers or touring cars, then you can explore the world of R-Factor 2 on the LFM platform as well, which is continuing to grow day by day, week by week, and introducing more and more things where you have the likes of a Nordschleifer, the sports car series, where you can have prototypes and just everything. It's all wonderful and very, very exciting. So a lot to dig your teeth into. And continue to grow this amazing community, which this is the first stream since LFM has gone over 100,000 users on the platform. So a big welcome to you all, and great to have you here as we continue to expand and welcome all of you in. But that'll be it then for this evening, and unfortunately for a couple of weeks from me. But do look to stay in touch. And also, if you want to just be a part of this community in general and love all things motorsport and sim racing, do also join the Discord server as well. And you can speak to all the lovely, lovely people that are in there too. But we'll look to have the action at Valencia next week, so do look to check out Twitch channel for that to see what goes on there. And then we'll be back here on YouTube in a couple of weeks' time for round 4 at Indianapolis for the Pro Series, and look forward to this championship delivering the action it always does so well when we come back there. So thank you everybody so much for watching, but for now then, it's goodbye.